Today's episode is brought to you by Instructional Design Institute. Is your goal in 2025 to go back to the basics when it comes to design? If yes, then our fundamentals course is right for you. This is a type of a 7-week learning experience where we cover everything as far as from andragogy analysis, backward design, Gen AI, UDL, evaluation methods, you name it, we go through essentially every type of component that makes up what it means to create a meaningful, relevant, and interesting type of learning experience. And the best part about this course by far is that you don't go through the course alone. It's a cohort type of a base model, so you're going to be thinking together, sharing, collaborating. The whole focus and the point of everything is to learn from others, and that comes from the breakout rooms, the discussions, and everything else of a sort. And throughout the past 6 cohorts, we've had pretty much everyone take this course, from teachers to professors to deans to, of course, instructional designers, and any other role you can basically think of within the educational sphere. All folks are welcome on in to partake inside of this course. So whether your goal is to be able to advance in your career, whether it's to be able to walk away with a type of a portfolio, or just to be able to learn the skills that are going to apply immediately into your workplace, that's what this course is all about. So whether you're a transitioning teacher, a current instructional designer, or even a professor, go down below inside of his show notes and apply to be a part of the next cohort that starts on Monday, March 3rd. Can't wait to see you inside of a class. And now, let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm an assistant director of instructional design, an instructor, author, blogger, and podcaster. And really, my purpose is to be able to help you learn more about instructional design. And you can find all of the resources that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. Today's episode is all about what it's like being an instructional designer in higher education today in 2025. With the new year in full swing, you may have noticed the flood of instructional design and leadership positions opening up at higher education institutions. I've been sharing quite a few of them online recently, and in the midst of doing so, I often hear a similar question from all of you of what's it like working in higher ed? For those of you contemplating the switch, you may have already have an idea of what the job entails. I've certainly documented this over the years of the day-to-day aspects of being an instructional designer, but what about the culture, the politics, promotions, challenges, and more? Well, my friend, this episode is for you. I've been working in higher education for over a decade across 4 different universities. I feel like I can give you a lay of the land and help you determine whether a career in higher ed instructional design is right for you. Before we begin, though, I must try and make one thing abundantly clear. I am painting in broad brushstrokes. Higher education is massive, and every kind of institution falls under the higher education umbrella. A university that empowers 40 instructional designers to lead their online learning division, and a local community college hiring their first ID to perform miracles, both are technically in higher ed. Are these roles going to be the same? I mean, some parts will be the same, but obviously they're going to have different challenges. So with all of that said, let's talk about what it's like to be an ID in higher ed. First, let's talk about the day-to-day. Contrary to what pops up when you Google instructional designers in higher education, we do quite a bit more besides flipping courses from face-to-face online. Yes, for some IDs, this is the bulk of the job, especially during COVID times. Even then, the idea wasn't to move from one mode of delivery to another, but to transform the learning experience into something better. But I digress. The components of an instructional design role in higher education are 5 different components: learning design, collaborating with subject matter experts and stakeholders, project management, research, and technology. Depending upon the project, you could be performing one or all of these components at any point in time. If you're creating brand new courses, this will look a bit different compared to repurposing or revising past types of learning resources. At the heart of what we do, though, comes designing learning experiences and ensuring that these align to the learning outcomes, the objectives, the assessments, the activities, and the content. Every step in the design process means thinking about how you are going to create the very best type of an educational offering for the students. As you can imagine, we don't do this alone. Collaborating with SMEs, who may be faculty, staff, administration, leadership, is a significant portion of a design process. It's also fair to say that collaboration among different departments is a crucial part. This could mean working with faculty or the learning management system administration or the team of engineers, academic advising, academic support, TAs, career counselors, and coaches. The list goes on and on. We work with all kinds of folks. Project management skills are essential to what we do. As you can probably imagine, we have to keep everything on track with deadlines, deliverables, and most importantly, within budget. That is a huge part of making sure that we are not going over the projected budget. Research is also a part of this. It is a multifaceted approach, since this means researching new product ideas. This could be something as small as new live webinar initiatives, all the way to researching new degree programs. We could be doing anything of the sort or in between. And of course, we can't forget about technology. Technology will always be an instructional designer's friend or foe, depending upon what tool you use. And for higher education, the learning management system is oftentimes where your learning experience is going to live. But as I was just saying, we do use a variety of different types of tools sometimes. So some of you have been using more from Rise or with H5P or a number of other different types of educational offerings to be able to support the main course. The one last tidbit I want to say about this section of the episode is that depending upon where you are located within the university will change some of these aspects. There are absolutely instructional designers who are outside of the online learning division. And I feel like that always catches people off guard of like, isn't your life only online? And no, we could absolutely be doing many things in person. My first instructional design role, nothing was online. It was all about educating the faculty and the staff and hosting different types of workshops around universal design for learning, how to create rubrics, and many different things like that. Like everything that I did was in person. So depending upon where you are within the institution is going to change the job. You'll see that teaching and learning labs across different universities employ quite a few instructional designers, and there are some divisions who they want their own dedicated person for learning and development, which isn't surprising to see. So maybe within your school, let's say that you have within your university, you have the School of Business or the School of Management, the School of Tech, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, hey, there is their own ID team located within that school. So with all of that said, instructional designers can operate within the context of online, in-person, or hybrid, which is now very common. Once again, it really does depend upon the goals of the organization and what they want their instructional designers to do. If you would like a more in-depth look at all of these components, I'm kind of going through them a little bit quickly. I have produced so much content over the years on the day in the life of an instructional designer. I have one for when I was working at MIT, and I broke down like every component that I just talked about in much more detail. So I'll be sure to link the articles, the YouTube videos, the podcast episodes. I have so much content about this. So if you really want to know about the day in, day out tasks, be sure go down below inside of the show notes and check that one out. So now let's talk about the rewards, the pros of being an instructional designer in higher education. And this is where and why so many instructional designers love working in higher education. You feel that your work makes a difference. At the end of the day, isn't that what we're looking for? Is that we're trying to be able to make a difference? And being an ID in higher ed, you can achieve this. Being an ID in higher ed has instilled in me this deep sense of fulfillment. And as an ID, you can see that your impact is actually making a difference in the university. Maybe this means reading about testimonies and reviews of the courses that you designed and worked on. Maybe this means having a great conversation with a very stubborn professor who never thought about the benefits of online learning before, and now they become like an online learning champion. Or maybe this means leading a workshop for faculty about accessibility standards, and now they're determined to raise the bar for their courses. When you can see that the effort that you put in makes a difference, it's going to drive you. It's going to make you work harder. Another pro for working in higher ed is the opportunities. Let's say that you have an idea for how to improve the learning experiences for students. You make the pitch to your manager, perhaps you show a demo of what you're talking about. Before you know it, you are leading that project. And now you're trying to be able to get it to fly off the ground. You're trying to be able to implement that inside of all of your different types of learning experiences. While higher education moves slowly, and that is very true, higher ed definitely does move slowly, I'm always shocked by the receptiveness of new ideas. So to give you an example, or a few examples, I've proposed ideas before about creating pilot programs to make sure that the courses we are creating actually meets the mark and being able to do extensive research on yes or no if we did things correctly and how to improve our types of courses and programs. I have launched podcasts before to supplement the information and material based around the lectures and the courses and to try to be able to meet adults where they are, because I know adult learners listen to podcasts, so why wouldn't we put podcasts in courses? And I've been fortunate enough to be able to create personalized learning tracks inside of different types of courses where someone, let's say, is more technical in nature for the topic, and someone, let's say, is just trying to be able to get a broader understanding of the topic. They shouldn't be going through the same type of learning pathway. I want to give them a more technical path and a broader path, and that's going to serve both of these target audiences. Every one of these ideas were greenlit, and then I ended up actually leading the initiatives to make this happen. This, of course, does come down to your manager. It comes down to the realities of your department, the perception of new ideas. Like certainly this is a couple of different factors at play here to make sure that this does actually work. But I will say within every institution I have worked at, they have always welcomed creative ideas to make things better for the students. So with all of that said, just be ready to do the follow-up work, because once you make your pitch and you deliver, all of a sudden, now it's a part of your job and you're going to figure out how to put that on top of your current workload and to make it happen. And the last reward I want to call out is growth. From a personal and professional perspective, you'll grow as a designer, an educator, a mentor, a leader. I've been incredibly fortunate to have authentic and genuine leaders over my time at these various institutions, and they saw the value in training me. And of course, I jumped all over these different types of chances to be able to learn more, to be able to contribute more, and eventually this led to promotions over time. I have never felt stuck in working in higher education, and that like I would hit a dead end and all of a sudden now everything is over and I can't figure out what to do. Even when I did face significant types of roadblocks and challenges, I was able to overcome them. I was never truly stuck. And to give you an example, I found a way to transfer out of one department into another who welcome my talents and they welcome me on the team. So there is certainly a way to really get around everything if you think about it hard enough. And all in all, folks, I gotta say, it is really rewarding working in higher ed. So now that I have probably convinced you that working in higher education is the greatest thing ever, let me bring things back down to earth, because at the end of a day, this is still a job, and every job comes with pros and cons, and there are definitely challenges with working in this field. The most significant challenge has to be institutional bureaucracy. Do you consider yourself a politician? Of course you don't. You're an educator, but you have to think like a politician. If you want to move an idea along or get immediate help, it's all about your connections and who you know. I have done so much networking over the years just to simply know people and figure out who does what. Higher education is famous for providing employees with illogical titles. And you have to think to yourself of like, what do you actually do? What does this title really mean? What are you responsible for? We even have this challenge inside of our own instructional design space, where if you search instructional design postings on LinkedIn, literally right now, you'll find 25 similar titles. And some people will strongly believe that these titles will share the same responsibilities. An instructional designer is the same as a learning designer, is the same as a learning experience designer, is the same as a learning architect. But then you are going to find other people who would gladly die on the hill that we should be called this title over that title. And the point is, you have to play the game. You have to know the key players. You really have to do your effort and your homework to figure out who does what and potentially how could they help you in the long run. And of course, how could you help them too in order to make both sides win? Next, let's talk about compensation. My first instructional design position paid $42,000 a year. My second paid me $60,000. My third paid me $72,000. The average salary of an entry-level corporate instructional designer in Boston, because that is where I am located, is between $85,000 and $90,000. So with that being said, compensation in higher education isn't splendid. It's a bit wonky. What sort of offsets the compensation is the other factors: tuition reimbursement, a high amount of professional development funding, excellent benefits. But the other part of all of this, though, which makes it very confusing to talk about, is that higher education pay goes by different types of salary grades. If you go to any university and Google their salaries, you will see a type of a chart that says that they'll pay a salary through like a range of like grade 15 to grade 1, or some types of different forms of numbers. And these types of ranges in these brackets of salaries, they are wildly different. They are so drastically different. And for some institutions, you'll see that instructional designers will fall between the ranges of like 60,000 to 110,000, which of course leaves you with saying like, well, what is it? That is significantly different compared to what I'm trying to be able to get versus perhaps what the website actually says. And as the applicant, you really won't know the real range until speaking with the recruiter or the hiring manager. The department, to give you some like insider baseball here, is that the department will give them a budget, and then that is the max that they are allowed to spend, but it falls within the grade. So that is like a tricky thing to really understand. It's rarely ever the full range. There's always some type of a cap for this. But I will say, the good news is that most institutions have been getting much more transparent with how they've been sharing like the actual pay range on the job within like a $5,000 or so pay range. So you can really understand what does the position pay. And if you were one of those people, by the way, who create a job posting and you listed a salary on there, kudos to you. Thank you. We're putting our type of field in the right direction. So greatly appreciate you doing that. And I'm really hoping that more of this is to come. One last note about compensation, by the way, before I forget, is that location matters. Location. If you are living in rural America, and then you look at like a densely populated urban city, oh my gosh, is the pay different. So look up the pay for, let's say, like New York City versus a town in Vermont. And there you go. That's all you need to see. The pay in New York City is almost like doubled compared to what a rural area will pay. And that's just how things are. And if you are looking to earn even more, let's say, but you're currently in ID and you're trying to figure out how to be able to earn more compensation over time, my advice for you is to move out of the individual contributor path, the IC path, and instead become a manager. It is a very different role, obviously, but leadership positions are going to be different compared to you just designing courses and different types of learning experiences. but the leadership positions do pay more because they put you down on that manager track instead. So if you are thinking about what is your next move, perhaps management is right for you, but be sure to give this some thought because it is a completely different role compared to just designing learning experiences. And the last challenge, it's a bit difficult to talk about because I feel like it feeds into a stereotype, and that's the last thing that I want to do. However, I do want you to be aware of this challenge just in case if it does happen, so I'm going to mention it, but just know that I hate talking about it. So if you search online of what's the difference between higher ed and corporate positions, you'll find that most folks talk about how faculty are royalty. They're the decision makers. What they say goes. The answer, though, suggests that all faculty abuse their power and that they make you feel like a peasant. Here's the truth. 99% of faculty you work with are fantastic. They're great to work with. They are kind. They care about educational best practices. They care about their students. Overall, they're good people. But just like with any other kind of job, you're going to have some people who are in positions of power with extreme egos, and it ruins the whole project. Out of all the learning experiences that I have designed over the last 10 years, there were only two, just to be clear, 2 times where I felt extremely disrespected, and indeed the people that I were working with both completely crossed the line, and it was like, ooh, this is not going to be a fun project. But the thing is, folks, it happens. Life goes on. There are jerks everywhere. So it really does come down, though, once again, to the culture of the university, the leadership, the structure, and how things are. And that is going to determine, of course, the importance and the significance of the role an instructional designer plays. When leadership positions instructional design to have a seat at the table, to make it abundantly clear that what we do matters as far as for following our processes and our best practices and such, then things are going to be great. If you have leadership who essentially positions instructional designers to be peasants and just to be the order takers, then we're gonna have a challenging time, and it's tough to do. So when you are interviewing, where you are talking with people and looking into switching into higher education, hypothetically speaking, assuming you are, really try to be able to get a sense of how does the university value instructional design. And last but not least, we have to talk about the future, because I hear from a lot of you about what is the future like of instructional design? Because all of us, of course, are now thinking about Gen AI. How is this impacting our field? So here's the inside scoop of what's happening within higher education. As you can probably take an educated guess, everyone is trying to learn about Gen AI and trying to figure out, where does it fit in? How do we use it? What are the dangers that we need to be able to know about? Higher education always gets hit with a new trend that is going to, quote unquote, revolutionize education every single year without fail. And right now it's Gen AI. I will say that now we've been talking about Gen AI for several years, so it's now moving out of the conversation of a trend and more as in, I think this is going to be here to stay, and figure out how we are going to use this technology and incorporate it into our practices. Many universities I can think of have already done this, and they actually do have different types of best practices. They are, of course, experimenting and figuring out what type of tool can do what thing, how can this actually improve the learning experiences, and it's been very interesting to see. And especially there have been some things too that have come back into the picture. And all of a sudden, now folks are looking into this more and more. To give you an example, I think about how Georgia Tech years ago incorporated virtual TAs into their courses to be able to assist students 24/7. And these types of models were trained off of the data from the courses themselves, the syllabi, the discussion posts, the content that the professor created that was all built inside of essentially like a virtual TA chatbot. and students could ping the chatbot at any point in time. And that was called Jill Watson, by the way, if you want to be able to research that more. Jill Watson was powered by IBM's Watson. And that was years ago. I think that was back in 2014, if memory serves me correctly. And now here we are, over 10 years later, and this idea of incorporating now, instead of calling them chatbots, now we have a different version, a more improved version called AI agents, being able to serve students in the classroom. And more of these experiments have been taking place to see if this can help out students in real time whenever they're doing their work. And it's been really fascinating to keep on seeing about the past is now coming back, but now we have better tools. We have more access. Now it's more affordable for many things. So right now, this is where higher education is going. A lot of experimenting, researching, testing things out, and seeing where Gen AI can make a difference. And once again, too, not all pros, by the way, plenty of cons with AI. Also being aware about the dangers, the biasness, and all those things like that. Before you ask, no, I don't think AI will replace you anytime soon. I led a workshop for faculty the other day on how to use Gen AI to improve their learning experiences, and for many of them, it was the first time they've ever used ChatGPT. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, you've never used it once. We've now been talking about ChatGPT for like 3 years, and you have never thought about making an account before and trying it? And plenty of people were shaking their heads of, no, first time. And it was stunning. It was stunning to watch them use this technology and to figure out how things actually work. And the one thing that I noticed too was that if it did not give them the results that they were hoping for within their first try, they dismissed it. And they basically said, see, it's garbage. It doesn't work. And then, of course, I'm like, well, tell me more. What type of prompt did you put in? What were you hoping to be able to get out of that? And then we were able to change the wording of things. And then by entering in a more refined prompt with more details around their expectations, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, it does have some value. It's like, yeah, but this paints the picture that when they are experimenting with something on their own, or perhaps not at all, they just dismiss this new type of technology, which is very much so aligned with higher education. Because once again, we get introduced to a new trend all the time, and people are burned out on trends. So I get it. I totally understand. And maybe that's not stunning to you at all. You're like, yeah, of course. They don't want to learn more about Gen AI, but this is where we're going. This is what we need to be able to do to learn more about Gen AI. And if you are trying to be able to get ahead of the curve and experimenting and trying out new things, even if you are not getting the results that you are hoping for, if you can just speak to what you have done and shown some of your experiments and being able to articulate your thought process and how you built out something, whether it is a custom GPT, whether it's even using something like with Dolly or Canva to create different types of visuals and images, or if you want to be able to experiment with video, like with Runway or OpenAI's Sora is now live as of this recording in February. You never know. You never know where that type of information can help you for thinking about things in the future. And that, folks, is a snapshot of higher education right now, today. Of course, I feel like this could change because, as you can probably guess from the state of the world right now in February of 2025, I feel like every time I look up the news to see what is currently happening, something drastic is impacting higher ed. And it's really tough to predict where we're going and trying to be able to plan ahead, which of course we're planners, we're educators. We want to be able to figure out and to map out our goals and our vision for the year. And then you hear from something that all funding has been cut off and you're like, well, okay, I guess we need to figure out where we're going to go with that. So it's really difficult to be able to predict around what what is coming down the pike as far as for within 2025. But this is currently what I'm experiencing, what I've been going through, and I just want to be able to share with you the pros and the cons of working within higher ed of 2025. Is it worth it? To me, it is. I love what I do. I've been in higher education for a reason. I feel like what I do makes a difference. It makes an impact, and that makes me feel great as a person. Are there cons? 100%, as you heard from many of them today, there are absolutely challenges, but within any role, there are always challenges. And that's just something that I have to be able to remind myself, and why I wanted you to think about that too, because when I talk with some of my friends in corporate America and they share their challenges of what they've gone through, where I'm like, ooh, I have not experienced that before, and I feel very lucky that someone doesn't come to my desk and say, I need you to create this training in 15 minutes, or I need it done yesterday. I have never experienced that. I don't want to experience that. I like being able to have some time to create my learning experiences, even if it means potentially working with a difficult subject matter expert and trying to be able to get everything aligned. But that's kind of like a fun challenge, if you will, with working with other people within higher ed. So, hey, I hope that insight helps of thinking about the world of higher education. And as one last reminder, folks, the next cohort for Instructional Design Institute with our course on the Instructional Design Fundamentals is launching very soon, Monday, March 3rd. This is our type of a learning experience. It's a 7-week course of really putting you through everything of what a learning nerd should really know when it comes to designing learning experiences. And as I'm not sure if I have mentioned this before yet or not, so you're going to be the first to potentially hear about this, but this is going to be one of the last live cohorts for quite a bit of time. And the reason being is because I'm going to become a dad. In June, my wife and I are having our first little one. I have no idea what to expect from this. I have been reading many books. I've been listening to many podcasts and talking with all my friends who have recently have kids. Seems to be now the millennial generation is now having all these kids as well, which has been just so cool to be able to talk with other people and just to learn, because this is something I know nothing about. So fun fact, if you want to send me any parenting tips or resources or whatnot, please feel free. I am willing to listen to any and all suggestions about how to be the very best dad that I can be. We are very, very excited. But once again, I know for a fact that many of my projects are going to have to take a little bit of a backseat until I can figure out essentially life with a newborn and making sure that I am juggling all responsibilities in the very best way that I possibly can. So this March cohort is going to be the last live cohort until I'll make an announcement about the next one. And I'm planning on making just a self-paced version of the fundamentals course. That's something I've been wanting to do, but I've been trying to finish up a couple of other projects. And that's what's currently happening. That is the inside scoop of things. So yeah, that's where we're currently at. So once again, if you want to be a part of a next cohort, Monday, March 3rd, go down below inside of a show notes and apply, and I'll be reaching back out to you from there. And of course, if you enjoyed this podcast, which hopefully you did, because you've been listening now for like 34 minutes, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, give it a 5-star rating. Listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, all 5-star ratings are welcomed, and I appreciate all of them. And that, my friends, that is all that I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.